I want to expose you broadly to the capabilities of ASAP because it's a very broad program, but also very deep. Let's focus a little bit on ASAP Next Generation and why we expended a huge amount of effort to change the user interface. The general motivations for developing ASAP Next Gen were two external customer requests: parallel processing and usability or user interface features. Internally, we wanted to modernize the architecture of the code because, as you can imagine, a code that's been developed over the course of 30 years may have some code that needs to be adapted to modern programming practice or modern libraries that are available to us. We want to have libraries that are current and supported because we try to support our customers, and we would like to be supported by the vendors who sell us solutions that we use to write our code. So we modernize the architecture to do that and standardize programming languages across product lines so that when we write something that benefits ASAP, it may also benefit Apex. And that has occurred in both directions. There are some features in ASAP that are relatively new that came from Apex first, or came in Apex first. This has been a multi-year undertaking, and we still continue to refine, but it took a couple of years of hard work to do these two things. The new development was done to support these requirements. These things make it easier for us to improve the product in the future because we're using streamlined architecture for our product. We basically just have chosen to use these new interfaces also for some other reasons. One little reason that may be of interest to you: if you're doing very complex problems and you're very good in C# or Visual Basic or Python, you can actually use these languages in the ASAP context. There are examples that are shipped with ASAP of how to do this. So if you have a lot of optimization code that you've written in C#, there's actually a possibility you could use that with ASAP. The primary working units of this interface are a completely new interface we call the Optics Manager, another new interface we call the Workflow Manager, and finally the Script Manager, which is, if you're writing extremely complex problems and you know the ASAP language well, you actually write scripting, which gives you direct control of everything. I am using the Optics Manager a lot because it's very efficient at putting together models. I use the Script Manager a lot for features that are very obscure and where I want to really manipulate the functionality of ASAP. We have also created catalog managers to manage sources, lenses, optical property data, scatter data, and so on. These catalogs are consistent between ASAP and Apex so that we can get more benefit from maintaining the catalogs. Instead of putting effort in twice, we can do it once. Other features include the 3D viewer, an optimization engine with an interface, a color analysis engine and interface that have been integrated direct. They're new and improved, but the old features are, for the most part, still there. There may be a few fine controls in the old interface that have not yet been implemented. This shows the basic user interface managers that I talked about. This is how we interact with the computational kernel and build models. There is the Optics Manager, which, as you see, is very graphical and is structured in a tree, much like a CAD program does. There's a tree and it has items in the tree which have sub-items and settings attached to them. This is a very rapid way to get started using ASAP, and it's very efficient. Geometry creation of many kinds of geometry is remarkably efficient in this, just because there's very little typing involved. and a lot more just picking things by touching them and that kind of thing. But it still gives control because we get to type the actual parameters in that we want to use. Switching from one manager to another is just as simple as, notice that there's a tab at the bottom of that part of the window, which is the left side by default in the ASAP interface. And we switch from one manager to another. The simplest way is simply by picking another tab. The workflow manager is almost like a dictionary. You have an optical task that you want to do, and you look it up. Like if I want to analyze the luminous intensity of a system of a light field on a detector, for example, then I find analyze sources or traced rays, and I go and say I want a graph of it, and I want it to be a luminous quantity, and I want it to be in angle space, so I want an intensity. So you actually go through this, and as you go out to the ends of the branches, you actually find yourself at the commands that we use. What this does is it actually pops up a one-line form that's kind of like a command line, but it tells you what all the items are. It's a great way to learn features of the language, or just to explore when you're not sure what feature you want, but you just want to know what features are available. You can actually learn virtually the entire language this way. And finally, the script manager, where we actually see all of the actual files that we interact with in ASAP. We can examine them as files. So we have viewers for some of them, and in the case of a script itself, we just have a script editor. As I said, one is not better than the other. They each have their strength. It depends on exactly what you're trying to do, which one you might choose.